I'm worried about Meta Quest 3. Not worried enough to pass on buying a headset, but recent events have raised what I believe are some serious concerns. In this video, we're going over the top 5 Meta Quest 3 concerns, then later, we're going to go over some concerns I received from all of you via the community tab on this channel. Before we get down to business, I have a favor to ask. Moving forward, this channel will be heavily focused on Quest 3 content. While I appreciate and respect the time and effort other channels put in to try to cover all things VR related, it's impossible to get to everything. Narrowing my focus allows me to deep dive every aspect of the Quest 3, games, hardware, the features, and everything else. So if you're interested in Quest 3, please consider subscribing. With that said, number 5. Number 5, first party game support. I'm recording this video a week before the Meta Gaming Showcase, which may end up negating this point, but I still need to mention it. It's been well documented that Meta has acquired 9 VR studios, and the only one that's put out a new game since acquisition was Camouflaj with Iron Man VR. Meta is currently in the midst of laying off over 10,000 employees, which included staff from Downpour Interactive, the developers of Onward, and Ready at Dawn, who made the Echo games. This, combined with Meta's declaration of Quest 3 being a mixed reality headset, more on that in a minute, does open up the possibility that studios like Twisted Pixel, Sanzaru, and Armature could potentially be working on something entirely different than what fans, myself included, are hoping for. It's been quite the dry spell for first-party titles on the Quest platform, and I'm worried this could continue. Number 4. Number 4, the shift to mixed reality. Multiple executives within Meta have said their next consumer device, i.e. the Quest 3, will be mixed reality focused. Look, I don't have anything against mixed reality. I'm always excited to try new things, which is part of how I fell in love with VR in the first place. But, and I'm just speaking personally for myself, this feels like taking a step back to potentially take 2 steps forward later. The existing user base has been clamoring for high-end VR content, and with the added power of the Snapdragon XR2 Gen 2, Quest 3 is positioned to deliver on this in ways that Quest 2 is simply too underpowered for. The success of the Quest 2 caused a paradigm shift in game development, since the less powerful Quest 2 became the most profitable platform, and thus the platform of choice of most developers. There's an argument to be made that all of those gorgeous PC VR games of the last 7 years weren't selling well enough to be profitable, but the idea was that Quest 3 would help bridge the gap between those games and mobile VR, offering bigger and better games on the standalone platform. This may still happen, but if Meta stays the course with pumping up mixed reality, those games will be fewer and further in between. Number 3. Number 3, Quest 3's longevity. The Quest 1 first released in 2019, and it seems like in 2023, a mere 4 years later, we're seeing the slow death of that headset. It's already lost support for several games, and earlier this year, Meta sent out a message to developers detailing steps to freeze or end Quest 1 support for their games, so that's a lifespan of about 4 years. The Quest 2 is the best-selling VR headset ever made, but there have been groans in the community, both from fans and developers, about the hardware showing its age and holding game development back. Qualcomm isn't going to stop making bigger and better mobile processors. In 2025, are we already going to be looking forward to the Meta Quest 4 and complain about how underpowered the Quest 3 is? Much like the cell phone market, will consumers be prepared to shell out hundreds of dollars every 3 to 4 years for new hardware to be able to play the latest and greatest? Number 2. Number 2, fan expectations. I'm recording this 24 hours removed from the latest Sony PlayStation showcase. I tuned into GamerTag VR's live reaction, and the disappointment at the lack of VR titles was overwhelming. As for the Quest 3, I've done my best to put out as much information as possible about what to potentially expect, but people were hyping this up to be high-end PC VR in the mobile setting. Thankfully, the narrative has died down, but I still remember the VR community hyping that launch of Pico 4 as a new age and a competitor to go head-to-head with Meta. That hasn't worked out so well. PSVR 2 is supposed to save VR and bring first-party AAA titles to virtual reality in droves. 3 months later, nobody's really saying that anymore, and people are already expressing the frustration. I'm worried that as the hype cycle will turn to Quest 3 this summer, we're going to ride the same roller coaster all over again. Even the Quest 3 is simply just a good headset with moderate upgrades and fidelity and features over Quest 2, that's not going to be good enough for a lot of fans. This sort of bleeds into my number 1 concern. Number 1, what don't we know? I had never heard the term Mura and didn't know anything about persistence until PSVR 2 launched. Who knew that 60 frames per second reprojected to 120 would cause as much ghosting and screen door effect as we've seen in games like Horizon? Who could have predicted the controller connection issues that were happening at launch? For ByteDance, who knew the US Congress was going to launch an investigation into ByteDance that will haunt the North American launch of the Pico 4? Who knew that 7 months in, Pico 4 would not have a single exclusive standalone title? I can't even begin to count the number of buggy game releases we've been seeing in VR and flat screen of late. As someone who is very type A, this sucks. It feels like products have been released with known issues that were meant to be patched or fixed later. For someone who plans to buy a product on day 1, that's my biggest concern, the unknown. Over to the community. On the community tab of my channel, I asked what their concerns were about Quest 3. Here are a few of the reasons. I'd love to get yours down in the comments. Jesu said price, especially those like me who intend to buy the Quest 3 but live in an unsupported region, as they only officially sell the Quest 2 to like 20 countries, so the price here is always very volatile. C6 Jones 720 said I would like higher quality pass-through and in color. On Gear VR you had 2D color pass-through, but it was pretty good. I like something like that on the Quest 3, but 3D depth correct. My concern would be the pass-through isn't quite that good. Daniel Cass said I'm concerned the Quest 3 will have a single panel display like the Quest 2, which will mean partial panel utilization at any given IPD setting. This will mean a lower resolution than the 2060 by 2020 per eye that's been leaked, and that's already lower than Pico 4's resolution. A single panel display would also mean a smaller horizontal field of view than the 2-panel equivalent. Another related concern to mine is the IPD adjustment. None of the Quest 2 IPD settings fit me, as my IPD is slightly wider than the largest setting. And with it being set at the widest setting, that's already small FOB is reduced further. Hopefully Quest 3 will have a better IPD adjustment. I'm also concerned about the imbalanced front heaviness of the Quest 3. Granted, the Quest 3 is expected to be smaller and lighter than Quest 2, but leaks indicate it will continue the design of packing everything, including the battery in the front of the unit, with a soft strap and back. And finally, WePlayVR says it not being a substantial upgrade over Quest 2 and how quickly they released the Quest 4. Basically just how Meta is being so iterative with the Quest line with so minor of improvements. This wasn't every post, as I'd likely be here another few minutes if I read them all, but it's still refreshing to see the community be more realistic in their expectations. I'd love to get your Quest 3 concerns down in the comments. If you want to know more about the new chip in the Quest 3, click the video link on the screen right now. Thanks for watching, I'll see you in the next video.